So what does the league do under these circumstances, Mike? Because again, you know the Sports Illustrated story, the woman who told her story to Sports Illustrated said Watson never touched her and never threatened her, and his behavior, as it was described, is nothing short of shocking. Obviously, there are two other. Or at least two other accusers who do say that he did force himself on them. Put them all together, and how do you decide? Is the league going to wind up having to decide whose story is believable and who isn't, and what to do with Deshaun Watson on this subject matter, or would a settlement make any sort of discipline from the league moot? What happens here?
Well, if the simple question is, what does the league do? And I don't mean this to sound like a smart-ass response, but the league will do whatever the league wants to do because it has the discretion, it has the ability under the various policies to fashion whichever outcome it thinks is best given these facts. And the entire personal conduct policy is driven by PR. 99.99% of all employers in America don't have something like this that regulates the private lives of employees. If you can show up for work, you got a job. If you're incarcerated and can't show up for work, you don't have a job. Anything else, that's between you and the civil courts, the criminal courts, whatever the case may be, for the most part. The NFL and the NFLPA have agreed to make this part of the existence of an NFL player because it does affect how all players and teams in the league are viewed, and the union's on board with it. And the league has the power to do whatever it wants. Now, I look at some precedent, and let me give you a couple of examples. Tyreek Hill a couple of years ago, when there were some troubling allegations in the confines of the off-season program happening, they struck a deal for him to just stay home. And then by the time training camp rolled around, he had gotten whatever clearance he needed to get from the criminal system that it was okay to move forward. Ben Roethlisberger, 2010. No arrests. There was one civil suit that was filed against him in 2009. There was an incident in 2010. Nothing ever happened from the perspective of arrest charges, verdicts, but the commissioner still said there's enough here for me to be troubled. And that's where I think this is, Rich. There's enough there for the commissioner to be troubled. The question becomes, at what point does the league say, we have to take action? We have to put you on the commissioner exempt list. Or if it all would get settled right now, and this is why I mentioned Roethlisberger, if it all would get settled right now, if they'd have a mediation tomorrow and all 19 plaintiffs come out of that room believing they got justice and it's over and they're satisfied, there's still enough there based on Roethlisberger's case that the league could say, Deshaun, this requires an intervention. That's the word that Goodell used with Roethlisberger. We need to take a closer look at this. There needs to be discipline, there needs to be action, there needs to be involvement, and there's already enough then. This all ends today. There's already enough for the commissioner to suspend Deshaun Watson if he chooses to do so.
All in the middle of Watson saying he wants out. All in the middle of all of this, where we spent weeks talking about his trade value and his worth and how he's done playing for the Texans. This just seems to be putting everything on a totally different plane on that front, Mike. That's just the way I feel. I'm wondering if that's the reality of it.
We can't be traded. After the first lawsuit was filed, the general manager said to me, how can anyone trade for him now? And I said, well, it's just one lawsuit. No one's investigated it. Everyone's got security resources at their disposal. They can figure this out. They can look into it. They can get, by the time the draft rolls around, to a point where they understand it. But then when it becomes 2 and 5 and 7 and 11 and 15 and 19, you can't trade him. And the ultimate irony here would be, and I never know whether I'm using that word right thanks to Alanis Morissette, but the ultimate irony would be that Deshaun Watson said, no way in hell am I ever playing for the Texans, and he wants out. And it could be the only way he gets paid this year, a football salary, is to stay with the Texans and be put on the commissioner exempt list, not play, but still get his checks. And at some point, the Texans have to ask themselves, do we just cut the cord and save the $10 million? It all depends upon how bad it gets. And we're still too early to know how bad it's going to get, and there may not be enough time between now and training camp for it to get to the point where it would be that bad. But it's unprecedented from the perspective of I can't recall a situation like this that any player has ever had to deal with. And it looks like there's no simple exit at this point for Deshaun Watson.